In this lesson, we are focusing on JavaScript. Just like our CSS code, we can embed JavaScript right into an HTML file, or we can also reference it externally. As a reminder, all previous work is posted on this section of my pirate.shu.edu web server. Only previous assignments are posted there that have been past due. And again, a reminder, begin organizing your own files as we will FTP them later on. Here are some basics related to JavaScript. When you are embedding JavaScript into an HTML file, you need to use the script tag. .js is the file extension for JavaScript. And because JavaScript is primarily related to the Java programming language, the majority of JavaScript is made up by functions. Additionally, we can have if statements which are used for conditional execution in JavaScript. In order to comment out a single line, we use // in JavaScript. Again, as mentioned, it is like Java, our JavaScript. It uses functions. It's interpreted, however, by the browser and not compiled like Java programming is. It's complementary to HTML, just like our CSS. Operating systems and browsers are independent from JavaScript for the most part. Again, we embed using the script tag within HTML files. We can store them right on our web server as JS files, which allow us to reuse them constantly. In that manner, we can do script source equals our scripts.js right within our HTML code. As a reminder of our div and span tags from earlier, they provide us with the possibility of creating space or breaks within our HTML code. Again, JavaScript is similar to Java. It executes on the client side. Here's an example of a JavaScript function. Document.write our first JavaScript. It's written directly within the HTML document due to the script tags. If we want to reuse our code, we need to save it as a .js file. Otherwise, it is only used right within the HTML file. Here's an example. You will notice here we are embedding using an external source for our JavaScript code. You'll notice this quite often within this specific weekly presentation, our onclick function. Here is our specific JavaScript function. My first function, alert, our test works. That means if we click the button, our test works. The onclick is something we commonly use within HTML code in order to have the user do something. You will notice in the example I provide you on my website, individuals can change the size of text based on their visual acuity. They can make the text larger or smaller based on their needs. Here's an example of an onclick in HTML code. Here is how that JavaScript file would look with a function of div change back, and doc change. Here's another onclick example in HTML. You will again notice that we are using an external reference to our JavaScript file. And again, Here would be the JavaScript file itself with an if and else statement right within the function, similar to Java programming. It's generally written as block or code that will execute once the functions are referenced. We can also use JavaScript to help us in validating forms. The syntax, as you've seen in the previous examples, function, you label your function, parentheses, bracket, information within the function, close bracket. And here's an example. You'll notice, just like Java, an argument is passed for use within the function. Then the function can return a value that can be used outside. Again, I provided you with the information that / comments out a single line. If you want to comment out more than a single line, you use /* at the beginning and then * / at the end of all of the code you want to comment out. Again, there are objects within JavaScript, just like Java code. For example, document. Here we have the example document.getElement by ID, my ID, .inner HTML equals some string. It is retrieving a element from within your HTML document. We generally can use span to change the value of a tag within our HTML elements. Here, we are changing the text within our div element. In JavaScript, again, just like Java, there are variables. But JavaScript does not have types. Java had integer, string, decimal, float, etc. JavaScript stores everything using the same variable type. We assign it var, my var, in this example. There is also scope. Variables have a limited scope when defined in a function. This variable, my local var, is not accessible from outside of this function because we have not returned it. Here are some operators associated with JavaScript. A regular plus sign adds two operands. Same with a regular subtraction sign, multiplication, and division sign. Two pluses increments or adds 1 to the operator. Two minus signs decreases the operator by 1. Two equal signs checks to see if two pieces of information are equal. And so on and so forth. These two examples are Boolean tests, where our answers are possibly true or false. The rest of these examples here are comparing our first number and our second number, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Here are some additional operators. You'll notice, again, some Boolean possibilities. The equal sign is just a simple assignment operator. So if A equals B, that means whatever is put into A, B has the same answer. You will notice examples of these: plus equals, minus equals, times equals, divided by equals over here. Plus equals, C plus equals A is equal to C equals C plus A. And the same for each of the other three examples. Just like in Java, JavaScript can feature an if statement. They're used for conditional execution, as mentioned earlier, and the else statements are used to run a different set of code if the if statement doesn't evaluate to true. So if we meet one condition, this code is executed. If that condition is not met, else or otherwise, we execute this code. Here's what happens right in action with an if code. If our first name dot value equals, then enter your first name. If our last name equals, enter your last name. And then alert string. Here's a little bit about AJAX, which is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. We will not be required to utilize this within this course, but it is interesting to know about AJAX just the same. Here are some more information about AJAX just for your knowledge. So this week we need to focus on cookies. What is a cookie? You'll probably notice you've downloaded some from websites before. If you go on a website, you'll notice that multiple times going to it, you may have the website load quicker. That is because a cookie has been stored on your computer, taken right from the web browser. Within a JavaScript cookie, we have a name, a value, a potential expiration, a path of where the cookie is, a domain of where the server that created the cookie is, security, whether the encryption is used to read or set a cookie, and small amounts of data are stored within a cookie. They're available via JavaScript only to the domain when the cookie was created. And just like our other pieces of information we've created in the course, they're only available within the same directory that they're created in. We can change this by changing our path to make cookies available to all files. So how do you set a cookie? Well, you can simply create a .js file with the following code within it. You will notice we set an expiration date. We have our path. What did we just do? Well, our variable can set a new date object. We can set the date. We can create a string using myCookie. And we can also delete our cookie using the setCookie function we created previously. So, in building assignment 6, this is literally the code you need. Copy this code into a text file, save it as a .js file. Here's getting a cookie. We provide this code within a .js file in order to get a cookie. However, you'll notice previously we're just looking to set a cookie at this time. So here's a JavaScript function test for you to complete. Using the code function myWhile function, AB, var I equals 1, var counter equals 1, while the counter is less than or equal to b, I equals I times a, and the counter increments by 1, return I. Explain how many times the following while loop will run and what the value of I will be when it is complete when called with my while function, where a is 2 and b is 8. Can you figure it out? The answer here is it will run 8 times. You'll notice that the counter is set to only run while counter is less than or equal to B. So it will run 8 times because we previously set B to 8. And I will equal 256. It's because we are going through 8 times. You will notice 2 to the 8th power. What does that give us? 256. And that is all for this week's focus on JavaScript.